Okay, now you're all warmed up. We've been to Ghana and back. So we're moving on with our next panel, our next session, which is about leading the way in diversity and inclusion. And I'll just ask the panel members, the people who are going to speak next, to join the table now. And if I could ask just to come and join up here for the moment, Danielle Hill, Joey Wright and Felicity Johnson. Thank you. And while they're making their way to the table, I'll give you that one there, Joey. While they're making their way to the table, let's bring up the question that we asked before the session, which was just an open question to everybody. And you can see some of the responses. We've had a great amount of responses, which is good. And we're going to turn that now into a word map of the most commonly featured words in people's responses. And you can see some of the words being, well, certainly people's very significant: diversity, implement, resources, access. It's quite interesting to see the kind of common words and themes that are coming up. I think that's working, that poll everywhere. It's quite good, isn't it? Okay, so as we're moving on, hey Danny, how are you? I think you're up first. Bit nervous? Yeah. So I'm going to just give you a bit of an introduction to start. We'll have each speaker come and speak, and then we'll join the panel and open up for questions. At last year's Melbourne Cup, we got to know a woman, Michelle Payne. But what few people know is that South Australia has its own Michelle Payne in South Australian champion reinswoman Danielle Hill. She's a professional harness racing driver. In 2009, Danielle Hill was named Australasian Young Driving Champion and was recognised with the Tanya Denver Award for Courage and Sportsmanship at the Sports SA Awards in 2015. And there is further information on each of these speakers at your table. So I'm going to ask Danny to come over to the lectern and we're going to have a chat. Thanks, Danny. Do you mind being compared to Michelle Payne?
No, not at all. That's great.
So, Danny, how did you get involved with harness racing?
I was lucky enough, my parents were involved in harness racing and I was born into the sport. So my parents had a property out at Penfield and so I just grew up with horses.
Fantastic. And how easy was it for you to get paid drives in the early days?
Times have definitely changed. Before I obtained my licence, it was more up to the trainers to pay the drivers. So drivers would just go out there just for the, I suppose, privilege of being able to drive horses, and a lot of them wouldn't get paid. And then by the time I obtained my licence back in 2000, we had a rule come in that we would have a standard fee. It's not much and it hasn't changed since then. It's only like $26 a drive compared to thoroughbred riders who get like hundreds.
Yeah,
but
right.
We do it for the love of driving, and yeah, so it obviously was a lot difficult prior to me obtaining my licence.
Are there many women who drive in South Australia?
South Australia, we don't have as many female drivers compared to the eastern states. Females are just completely taking over in Queensland, Sydney and Melbourne, so it's awesome. But I suppose I've been, like I said, I'm lucky enough that my parents had the property and I could train my own horses and drive for them. So I was lucky enough to not be held back.
Yeah. You probably didn't see any obstacles, did you? Did you know that it wasn't a thing that women did, or?
It definitely wasn't. It's still a male-dominated sport, really. But I suppose I never let that worry me. I had my own team of horses, like I do now. I train my own team. So if no one else wants to put me on, I can still drive my own horses.
That's a good position to be in. So these are some of the photos, are they, of your driving? So with some of your horses, are they? Or you drive for others as well?
I think you'll find most of these photos are of horses that I drive for other trainers. And there was one photo in particular that had the breast cancer colours on. We do a race meeting every year where we support breast cancer, and it's a reinswomen's only night. That's what happened in the early days. That it was reinswomen could only compete against other reinswomen, and we weren't allowed to drive in other races with males, but that soon changed.
Yeah, it must be one of the few sports, and some might say, is it a sport, is it not a sport? I mean, it's one of the few sports where men and women compete equally, and they're on the same sporting field. Is that
yeah,
right?
Definitely. I don't find, not so much now, we compete against the guys, and same as the trainers. We train just like the guys do, and horses like us, so we're lucky.
That's fantastic. Now, Danielle, I think some people have seen one of the slides that has come up, which is a little bit upsetting, and you're going to tell us a little bit about what happened on the 17th of May 2010, when a major event happened that really changed your life. What happened that day?
Yeah, absolutely. So those photos, that's what I looked like when I arrived at the Royal Adelaide on the 17th of May 2010. That was after a race fall. It was quite a simple accident, and accidents do happen, quite often. We're dealing with horses and equipment and stuff like that, so things happen. No horse was to blame for that accident, although one did step on my face, but there wasn't the fault of the horse. It was quite a simple accident. My brother happened to be in front of me with his horse, and his horse broke stride. I was crossing to the inside at the time. This was during the final lap, and my horse, as my brother's horse has come back onto me, my horse just clipped his wheel. My horse went down. I remember falling. I don't remember lying on the track, but that was all fine. It was the horse trailing the field, probably about 20 metres behind, that trampled me. So from there, I don't remember anything. I remember then being at the Royal Adelaide, and then waking up the next day and asking for a mirror.
Gosh, that must have been a bad day.
It was, but since then, how everything's changed. My perspective on life has changed so much. I suppose I had obstacles that I never thought I'd have to deal with. I'm half blind. The whole right side of my face was smashed. But then I joke about that now. It's only my head, the rest of me's fine. So it was definitely a challenge from there. I've had lots of surgeries since, and the plastics team at the Royal Adelaide have done an amazing job, in my opinion. So I'm very lucky.
And did you developed a brain injury as a result of that accident as well?
Yeah, that's right. I had bleeding on the brain as well, which was probably the most difficult thing to overcome. There was lots of things that sort of followed that memory loss, and then I suppose not having confidence in that you can get back to a normal life. I went through rehab for a couple of years, and it's amazing, just simple little skills that they can teach you that help. And yeah, I'm really proud of where I've got to now.
So do you think you'd drive again?
Not in races. I assumed that would be the end of me. I suppose I was too scared to get back out on the racetrack. I spent the first 4 to 5 weeks in hospital, and I just had my 4 little walls, and everything seemed fine. But then walking out of the doors of the Royal Adelaide, I thought, oh wow, there's a whole big world out there, and I can't see half of it. So it was definitely a challenge. I got back into the sulky around my mum and dad's property before I got back in a car and drove. So horses were definitely my sanity, and I suppose because I'm a horse lover and the horses love me too, they helped me get back to where I am now.
How did the harness racing industry see you after the accident?
I suppose they didn't necessarily see me any different, but when I wanted to get back driving, I found that people really weren't prepared to give me a go. It's like, oh, we can't put her on, she's half blind and she's had a fall. But then, like I said, I have the support of my family and really close friends that had their own horses that they thought this horse would be great for me. And we sort of had to start out like that. I'd have to drive certain horses over other ones, but now I wouldn't imagine people would have an issue with putting me on. I'm the leading state driver at the moment, and I've already driven over 100 winners this season. So I think people are pretty confident to give me a go now.
Yeah, how long did it take you? Was it a couple of years to get up to that standard again, to be competing?
I had nearly 2 years off after the accident, and then when I got back, I started driving in trials. I had something to prove to myself. I wanted to make sure that I was okay when I went out there. I'm very hard on myself, so I didn't want to go out there unless I thought I was going to do the absolute best, because I watch a lot of replays. I didn't want to watch myself on TV and go, ooh, shouldn't have done that. So I'm very hard on myself. Sorry, and I do sometimes forget things.
That's no problem at all. Did you find that your perceptions of yourself changed and your limits competing?
No, I like to push myself, and I think now, since the accident, I'm definitely a better person, and I think I'm capable of anything now.
That's brilliant. That's very inspiring. And has harness racing been a support to you through that process?
They were always there, I suppose, to help if I had any issues or anything like that. They have been supportive, but as far as me getting back to where I wanted to be and getting through rehab, that was something that I went out and looked for. And then I had great help with the Birch rehab. They pushed me and they helped me and they gave me so much guidance. And then we asked the stewards and that, if they could take the next step for me and assess me and things like that. So I have had a great support team and all that.
I mean, it's common that drivers are injured like this. I mean, that's part of the sport?
No, this was a freak accident, really. We do have falls, but I mean, most of the time we get up and walk away like the rest of mine. But this instant, it was a horrible one, unfortunately. But, since then there has been a couple of cases where we've had some nasty falls, but I don't believe those drivers are back driving. But I suppose it depends on your determination. I thought I still had something to give. Yeah. Do
you think that there's any suggestions of how the industry could have helped you to get back or supported you? Is there any learnings that you could share with us about that process?
I suppose it's hard when, harness racing, we have to provide a product for people to bet on as well. So, they don't want to send me out unless they think that I was capable. And so that I did have to prove that I was okay to drive. But I suppose it's a hard industry, and you just need to get out there and just prove to everyone that you're capable.
Is it, what sort of advice, I guess, Danny, would you give to women or people with a disability wanting to follow in this sport?
You have to prove to everyone that you can do it, unfortunately, because it's very hard to get a go. Yeah.
And that's probably because you've had family support too, in terms of having the horses and the support around you. Would that have been a key factor?
Absolutely. If I didn't have the support of my family and like my parents' property and our own horses, things would be a lot different. It's hard for people unless they're involved in a stable, I believe, to get involved in harness racing. But then, there's associations out there now who take on like retired standardbreds and they retrain them. And I suppose if anyone was interested to get involved, they would, volunteer for someone like that, just to show, I suppose, that they can work with horses and things like that. But, you know, I always found it difficult, if you weren't sort of involved with family or friends, then it was definitely a hard industry to break into.
The issue of you now, I mean, you have a disability now. How is it for you coming from someone who hasn't had a disability to having this now? Has that changed people's view of you just more broadly? Do you feel different?
I don't necessarily feel different unless I walk into something. But people, I suppose, I don't know whether I've ever worried how people really take me, because it's my view of myself, and I know that I'm a capable driver, I'm a capable trainer, and I'm out there to do my best.
And I guess the rise of the disability movement in sport, I mean, how does that sort of impact you now when you look at it?
It's actually something I'm really proud of. So yes, I'm female in a male-dominated sport, but I'm also half blind and have a brain injury. So for me to, I suppose, in the second season back after the accident, to drive 100 winners in the season was pretty special, and something that I'm very proud of.
So you should be 100 winners. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, Danny, you're an outstanding individual. I don't know why more people don't know that we have someone like you in the States. So thank you so much, and we'll have some questions in a moment. So if you'd like to take a seat, thank you. Okay.